Hello, this is Mark. In this video I'm going to talk about low latent inhibition. For any of you who are unfamiliar with latent inhibition, it's a process of deeming novel information as more relevant relative to processed or previously processed information that has been categorized by the mind. It's essentially a survival mechanism. For instance, if you are attacked by a lion and that is a novel event, you're going to focus on the lion because it's novel, and you're going to exclude the relevant information from the background that can cause less probability of survival. And with higher latent inhibition, it's essentially a spectrum. Some people have very low, some people have higher, and those who tend towards the higher range, they're going to have less stream of input. They're going to be able to hyper focus to a higher degree on less details, or less information, less stimulus at one time or one given time frame. Whereas with low latent inhibition, total opposite, they're going to continually take a heavy stream of information, inputs, and they have to continually process it, and they adapt to that or become acclimated. And it can be very beneficial for creativity, idea generation, solving problems, being quick, with the processing, because anytime you're processing a heavier stream of traffic, that comes to the mind, and you can have propensity to generate more output, and you adapt to that. Your processing speed almost, it's adapted, and it's proportional, to whatever, however, like your mentality, or, the external and the internal, that dictate, the whole processing speed. If there's heavy external activity, it's going to cause higher processing speed. If if you have to adapt to a very dense area, populated area with a lot of, activity, a lot of responsibilities, you're ultimately going to have increased processing speed. And if your mind is always taking in more stimulus, and more stimulated, it's also going to increase. So generally, to have more processing speed, it can also be a disadvantage, because like if they aren't able to control the input, or be able to withstand the bombardment of input on a given time frame, it can cause a convolution of all information, which leads to disorganization, confusion, eventually psychosis, and escalate into other, mental problems. So it has its caveats and also disadvantages, but generally, you could think of it like we all have a focal range, and the focal range, for instance, if you take a circle and you cut it, or represent it as a pie, and you take a slice of the pie and you project that three-dimensional space, just like the shape of the eye, it's projected, and that gives you your focal range. And within the focal range, people with low latent inhibition, they can basically have a higher surface area of inputs that is covered over a broad range, and it's not even, independent of the range. Some people have a broader range, some people have a narrower range due to higher sensory awareness, and some people have more sensory sensitivity, so forth. And generally, people with low latent inhibition tend to have higher sensory sensitivity, so forth, because of stimulation on a continual basis. But so you can think like people with higher latent inhibition, it's the opposite process. They're not going to have the higher surface area. It's going to be more discrete. But however, they have the benefit of hyperfocus and be able to solve immense, difficult problems, and they don't have the distractibility and so forth. And so there's, everyone has on the spectrum. Some people can probably switch, but people who are higher on low latent inhibition are more towards the severe end. It's harder for them to switch. So yeah, and another problem is ADHD, for instance, is one of the conditions that can be related to low latent inhibition. People can have both conditions, but like ADHD is different because within the focal range, they're continually diverting their focus, to different inputs at a given time. So it's all over the place, and the more severity, the more chaos, the more entropy. So think of like you're heating an object, you're creating vibrations within the object. The vibrations, you have more energy, you have more vibrations. It's transmitting everything, So with low latent inhibition, it's like, think of like high conductivity. You're transmitting through vibration over large network that such that the elements, the nodes are very close together, and it's creating the energy transmissions, and more, and basically that's where like it can potentiate. There's more potential. Not that they have more potential, but it potentiates, ideas, creativity, so forth. In ADHD, it's just like have like a scattering, your nodes, but you're diverting in different directions, if it's going at a faster speed, it seems like it's a continuous process, and therefore it can seem like it becomes overlap with low latent inhibition. But you can have both conditions, and I'm sure if you had both conditions, it could be very, very chaotic. But yeah, that's just my synopsis. For myself, I don't believe I have low latent inhibition. I probably am closer to the mean. But for those who I've known who I believe who have low latent inhibition, they generally have very high attention to detail, and very beneficial to the work, industry and work in general. Always on par, because attention, especially with engineering and other fields, you need a very high attention to detail. And if you miss the details, if you low attention to detail and so forth, and you don't focus on it as much, and of course, people with low latent inhibition can still formulate the big picture as well. They can utilize it to full potential and use intuition as well. So it definitely can have a very high potential, lead to a very high potential. But yeah, there is the disadvantages as well. One problem with low latent inhibition is it can definitely increase impatience, because it is very related to the processing, and adapting to the heavy stream of the density of the focal range. And anytime, really, like like if you think of like a very densely populated area, if you notice that, or relative to a countryside or areas where it's not a lot of people, not a lot of contact, not a lot of responsibilities, not a lot of decisions that you have to make, and there's the network of interactions, the transportation, you don't have to go from A to B to Z to all over the place in your range, so it's like over time in the very densely populated areas, and the complexity definitely increases, and you have to cater to more customers and needs. The demands increase, and generally to cater to the needs, you have to adapt to the situation, and the processing speed must increase. So that's why you find, like in higher populated areas, like New York, or it could be California, or it could be Texas, Dallas, and so forth. You're going to have people who are more impatient generally, because they're acclimated to getting productivity, and of course there's a higher status of those locations, and with higher status you got more responsibility, more complexity, and so forth, and generally, and people are so acclimated to going multiple places at once that if anyone steps in a way that has acclimated to a slower rate of change, then it will cause the reaction, or it doesn't, no, not necessarily cause a reaction, but it intensifies or propagates it, because and what mitigates the reaction is really just a contentment, so, or the awareness. And it's not, everyone's not immune. It basically, we all deal with situations, traffic loads, or there's car accidents, and you're trying to get to work, and everything slows down, and it's just like your mind, it's just because your mind is so adjusted, and the reward, the signaling, because essentially reward is proportional to space and time, and essentially how much space you cover, because if you cover more space, you have more events, you have more possibilities for rewards, and therefore more satisfaction. You adapt to that, and if it changes, then it can cause an internal reaction, and then that's outwardly expressed. So like generally, yeah, if you adapt, same with low latent inhibition, or adapting to the high stream of information, it's like they have a highway in their mind, traffic and this and that and so forth. So that can definitely intensify the reactions, or increase the propensity for impatience, not necessarily cause it, but just a propensity. And I think the general key is just to be content, because some people aren't used to it. They're not used to the highway, traveling on the highway. They're from different cultures. They have a different perception of time. In the U.S., it's time equals money, or they say that because we just we're always working and trying to progress, and as a productive nation, and it's very economically has high economic growth. So there's a lot of it's facilitated on the, jobs and customer relations and so forth. Other countries, they just enjoy the countryside, they enjoy the scenery, um, they enjoy their, use of time, and just, they have more expanded events versus our events are compressed and are converging, to zero. And essentially what I mean by that is, for instance, suppose you have an event, because events could be like, you can think of time, just like an arrow. You're going from the, birth to death, and you could perceive it, from left to right. That's how in the U.S. we perceive, or motion, and so forth. Really, time is just an expansion, a rate of change, of events over time. And, you have these events basically that you can define, like, let's suppose you define an event as like, you're in this environment and you're having a social, like you're enjoying, you have a social conversation, or you're working, or you're in some just environment. It could be any environment. And let's suppose like the environment is you're out in the scenery, you're, fishing, camping, so forth, and you have some activity, and an event is, that activity. And suppose like it's, and now like if you translate this event to another region, they have more time to expand on that event, because they don't have the, in the back of their mind, the work and the responsibility, the stress and all that. So essentially, you're not able to spend as much time on these similar equivalent events, and that gets compressed. So that's what I mean by that. And, yeah, I think this impatience can be a problem, especially more in the U.S. It's just because of this global, the problem. And the thing is like we have to, value the time, enjoy, the work, and, make the most of our time, try to expand, broaden the events that we have. And, if we are, patient, we're understanding, we can, essentially mitigate all the negative reactions, and that can actually facilitate the growth, expansion of the mind, the body, the spirit, everything just will grow, because any of these negative reactions that ultimately just pulls you down, incrementally pulls you down, even though you may not think it will. Small one. They say one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Well, if you take multiple incremental steps, it's gonna, it can cause, eventually this expands the area of, potential damage. So, yeah, this was just my, viewpoint on low latent inhibition, its benefits, some possible disadvantages. Everything has disadvantages, advantages to a point. So it's, it's very interesting. And I just thought I'd share my view.